Hey guys, it's Jason. I hope everybody's doing well out there. It's been a while since you've heard from me on this channel. What I've got for you today is a re-upload of a video I originally put out in March of last year. Shortly after uploading it, received a copyright claim on one of the clips I'd used. Now, most of my videos I use 100% original footage that I shoot myself, but when I do these documentary style ones, I illustrate it with found footage, most of which I source on YouTube. And although this is the first time it's ever happened to me in many years of putting out these kind of documentary type videos, this is sort of an occupational hazard on YouTube. If you borrow other people's footage without permission, sometimes they will put a copyright strike on your channel and there's pretty much nothing you can do. I did contact the owner of the footage. They didn't respond, so the issue couldn't be resolved. So basically I've taken out the offending footage and just replaced it with something which I think is actually better. And obviously I've revisited the video, I've rewatched it, and I still stand behind everything I say in this video. I think it's actually probably it's probably the most important video I've put out on this channel, because it represents sort of where I was at that time with a lot of the things that I was experiencing and thinking about. And I know a lot of the guys watch this channel because you think and feel in similar ways about the world. So this video got quite a positive response from my long-term subscribers when it first came out, so I'm putting it back up for you guys and for myself because I think this message needs to be heard. So stay tuned, there will be more material coming on the channel, more original material. Updates on what's going on with life in France, and again, I hope everybody's doing well. Thanks for watching. I've been asked to watch a couple of YouTube videos about conspiracy theories. I've seen many videos of this nature before, but the person asking me to watch them is very important to me, and so I agreed to watch just a couple more. This isn't really a video response to the specific videos in question, although I will refer back to them for illustrative purposes. I don't care to justify any position of my own, or to attempt to persuade anyone to see things my way. It's been a very long time since I was done arguing about this kind of stuff. Each of us must choose to find his or her own way out of the movie theatre, or simply to sit down and enjoy the rest of the show.
What if I were to tell you that the world is not in fact a sphere, but actually a flat disk? You'd probably point to photographs like these, of Earth from space.
Thanks to the internet, there now exists the possibility of such a surfeit of information reaching each individual mind every moment of every day that it has become necessary to develop a seriously prejudiced attitude as to what new information to allocate precious real estate in one's conscious thought. Most people simply don't care to investigate the particular things I do as deeply as I do, and that is absolutely understandable. It is not my intention to overstate my level of knowledge in these things, but simply to share a perspective, and even then only with those who are open to listening. Drawing lines and assigning labels moves us in the wrong direction.
What about the fact that if you fly in one direction long enough, you end up in the same place? Ha! That's just what the Illuminati wants you to think. That's why they control the flight patterns, to make you think you're going in a straight line when you're actually flying in a circle.
It is believed that only recently, in the past couple of decades, that the term conspiracy theory has taken on a much more derogatory meaning and seen a big surge in popular usage, being used, as in the first video referenced here, deliberately to polarize the debate on a given subject. To polarize a debate in this fashion is akin to flipping the chessboard over when things aren't really going your way. Like conspiracy theory, the term fake news isn't new either, but it has seen an explosion in usage since 2016, according to the analytics kept by various search engines. Anti-vaxxer is a similarly deliberately divisive term, flat earther also, and I'm sure there will be many others I'm unaware of. The basic premise behind modern usage of these terms is that such things are objectively defined, that any debate on these matters has been settled. This premise is in fact entirely false, and later on in this video I'm going to show you why.
There's one out there for everybody. The JFK assassination, the fake moon land, the Freemasons, chemtrails, CIA mind control, rigged election, Area 51. Once you get going, it's easy to see secret plots and shadowy cabals everywhere you look.
Reading even the generally accepted version of history reveals just how prevalent conspiracies are in every aspect of human life. In the vast majority of cases I've taken the time to look into, 9/11, JFK, shadow government and the influence of think tanks and secret societies on the direction of society, the world's banking and financial system, legal systems, organised religion, the influence of pharmaceutical manufacturers on mainstream medicine, indeed many people's entire attitude to health and healing, germ theory, the moon landings and space exploration in general, even the ultimate metaphysical properties of the Earth, the solar system, and the very nature of existence itself. It's simply a matter of being able and willing to see things from a different angle, which grants us insight. Being able to hold in the mind's eye two or more competing theories for how something operates, whilst practicing complete detachment from any preferred outcome. I do acknowledge that what I will describe here is a very different approach to that exhibited, or at least seemingly being exhibited, by most of the sorts of people who typically get labelled as conspiracy theorists nowadays. And this is just part of the problem with the label. It may seem unlikely that the QAnon crowd, for example, are into metaphysics and philosophical debate, and that might be the fuel for their search for a certain kind of subjective truth. But in my experience, you'd be very foolish indeed to rule it out in every case. Once I took the brakes off in my own search for truth, both within and without, the people I began coming in contact with online and in person came from every background imaginable. The one thing we all had in common was a complete absence of judgment for one another's subjective truth. That is the mindset one must cultivate in order to pursue one's own personal truth to the fullest. Also critical, if insight is our ultimate goal, is being okay with not knowing exactly how something happened. When you start with the belief that what you already hold as truth, often what was accepted at a stage of your life before the development of critical thought even, is an established and unquestionable factual explanation for the way things are, and you're trying to work backwards from there, you might well find you're wasting your time watching a video like this. Retake your seat in the movie theatre and just enjoy the rest of the show.
The conspiracy theorist sees skullduggery everywhere. Their default position is that everyone must be a liar and simply everything is a cover-up. Their fear of being taken for a dupe is so great there can be no glimmer of trust.
So how does someone become a conspiracy theorist anyway? In 2001, I was a young art student. I remember very little about the 11th of September of that year, but I do recall a few key things which did occur to me at the time. I found it extremely suspicious that despite several members of the US government saying in the following days that US intelligence had had no foreknowledge of any attacks, they somehow had known within the first couple of hours who they were going to blame for it. They knew his name, and they even had a photograph of him. Bin Laden himself did not claim any involvement with 9/11 until late 2004, and no attempt was made to legally establish him as a mastermind. Contrast this with any conventional crime scene investigation where no detective will even so much as speculate on what has happened or who might be responsible until they've made a thorough investigation. I also remember thinking that there'd likely be a bloody retaliation from the US military. Understatement isn't the word. Within a single month, US forces had invaded Afghanistan, backed by the UK and the armies of several other nations. A year later, they were in Iraq. This dual invasion was by far and away the most horrendous thing that had happened in the world during my short lifetime, and nothing has come close since. No one has been held accountable. The criminals responsible are still at large. The images that made it onto the mainstream news, of homes and hospitals blown apart, screaming children, blood-stained corpses littering ruined streets, were heart-wrenching. In my innocence and my ignorance, I believed the only way the world could be safe was if these savage lands were conquered by military force and their dictatorial fundamentalist governments were replaced with so-called democracy. I believed this because I watched the news every morning before work. That 30 or 40 minute period between waking and heading out the door, when the human mind is most susceptible to brainwashing and propaganda. I believed that murder and torture and the destruction of a way of life were justified by revenge and the need to make the world a safer place. Collateral damage, they called it. In 2007, a film came out called Zeitgeist. Among other subjects, it dived into 9/11, specifically how the event itself was portrayed by certain elements within government and media, how the powers that should not be used it to justify a pre-existing agenda of foreign military intervention, and how alternative viewpoints contradicting the official story were systematically being suppressed. This film, and my subsequent research of many associated topics, changed my mental picture of the world and the direction of my life sometime in my mid-20s. At that point, I was still far too concerned by what my peers might think of me to really speak out about what I was learning, but that wouldn't last long. I'm not sure I'd ever even heard the term conspiracy theory at that point, but from that moment on, I've witnessed time and again how people shy away from inconvenient or uncomfortable truths, especially when they directly contradict something that has already been accepted as incontrovertible fact. In time, however, I came to understand how people would rather turn a blind eye than enact any practical shift in the way they approach life. Despite my newfound desire to make a difference, I have backtracked many times on lifestyle changes, simply because doing what we perceive as the right thing often requires more personal accountability than the average human being can muster on a daily basis. During this period, I began to gravitate towards ideas which threatened to turn my perception of the world on its head. Not to exchange one belief for another, more controversial version, but in an attempt to bring the light of understanding to some of the more shadowy corners of our collective human story. In an attempt to live congruently, that is, with my outward actions reflecting my inward sense of what was right and true. If any of that makes me a conspiracy theorist in some people's eyes, then so be it, but it's not a term I use. In the interest of balance, I've stopped thinking of others who can't or won't, or who simply choose not to see what I see, as sheep. It is a blessing to receive the gift of true sight. All of my conspiracist brothers and sisters would do well to remember that. We've all chosen our individual paths, and we are empowered as a result of acknowledging that choice. I've asked myself recently, what must be worse? To believe that an invisible enemy can manifest out of nowhere, that kills anyone unlucky enough to breathe it in, can destroy interpersonal trust and national economies, and trap hundreds of millions in their homes. Or to understand that respiratory illness is as old as respiratory systems, and that empirical data can be interpreted variously depending on which model one uses, and that people can seemingly be so content with accepting a narrative simply because they don't, won't, or haven't taken the time to properly look into things for themselves.
Upholding quarrelsome hypotheses delivers some hugely redemptive emotional pleasures. One often feels empowered and superior to all those who still blindly trust in the status quo.
Carl Sagan gave us this quote: "It's good to be open-minded, but not so open-minded or your brains fall out." From an outsider's perspective, this thinking seems common among those who don't wish to entertain what they consider outlandish ideas about the world, which is absolutely fine. Enjoy the movie. But if we were to apply Sagan's philosophy as a strict rule, we'd find that the most close-minded people of all would be holding the trump card on everyone else. This begs the question, who really gets to decide what level of open-mindedness is valid? These markers represent several different theories about the way things are, or how they came to be the way they are, and the likelihood of their being true. Note that I'm not giving specific examples, as it is entirely subjective, where each idea relative to one another would fall on the scale at the bottom, which will measure how much credence each person gives to each particular theory. To the left are ideas you know to be true, or believe in so strongly that they're indistinguishable from knowledge, and further to the right are ideas which you believe to have little or no basis in truth whatsoever. Now I will add markers to the graph which represent individual people and their perceptions. To one side of their head, a progressively bright green bar signifying their level of agreement with the plausibility of certain ideas. To the other, a progressively bright red bar signifying their disagreement. Some people are very open-minded. They have a much longer green bar and are positioned further to the right on the spectrum of ideas. With a decent number of people now positioned, and despite the obvious limitations of a linear left-right system for quantifying our theoretical ideas, we can see that there is no objective qualification of which ideas are valid and which can be labelled as conspiracy theories. We can call this label an arbitrary term. Here is a real-life example. I was talking with two friends of mine who were saying, through their masks, that myself and countless others were conspiracy theorists for questioning certain aspects of the COVID-19 story. Okay, I said. Will you be taking the vaccine when it becomes available? Hell no, was the emphatic response from both. Pointing at a Stop 5G sign on the wall next to us. What about 5G? Do you want it in this area? Hell no, once more. You guys are both conspiracy theorists then. Welcome to the club. They kept the masks on, but it did make them laugh, and it did make them think.
We live in conspiratorial times. Deeply sinister motives appear to be at work everywhere beneath the surface. Taking anything on good faith seems a sure route to naivety and disillusion. It's never been a more tempting moment to become a conspiracy theorist.
Someone does not become something called a conspiracy theorist because they believe in something called a conspiracy theory. They are only labelled as such by someone else who simply happens to be less open-minded towards the specific premise in question, and in many cases, someone who just hasn't looked into said premise quite as deeply. There is no need to generalise and to project assumptions about somebody's mental health, gullibility, intelligence, life experience, or any other irrelevant subjective metric. This should be accepted by both sides of the debate over any given subject in order to progress beyond mere mudslinging. Indeed, debate is not even the correct term if understanding these things is our true goal.
Both the intelligent skeptic and the conspiracy theorist start from the very same place, with an awareness that things may well not be what they seem. This is, in itself, no sign of madness or delusion. It's the basis of some of humanity's greatest discoveries and insights. To claim that the Earth orbits the Sun would have sounded the height of delusion in 1473.
Who then gets to decide what is a worthwhile topic for exploration? In a free society, the answer must be you. You get to decide for you. I get to decide for me. Everyone gets to decide for him or herself. A truly free society simply does not require a blanket term of derision for ideas which run counter to the mainstream version of events. A truly free society does not require links to Wikipedia articles providing context to be placed beneath YouTube videos. It does not require Facebook to blur posts that have been deemed misleading by independent fact-checkers. If we're not very careful, those living now will be the last generation to know anything approaching free thought, and that's not hyperbole. Many so-called conspiracy theories are the front line of a battle against the real-life version of George Orwell's literary concept of thought crime. Not imposed by some centrally controlled government or government-influencing think tank, but self-imposed by the people onto one another. Social media platforms of all persuasions are knee-deep in the debate over where free speech might end and censorship should begin, and terms like conspiracy theory and fake news have become the weapon of choice for many. As social media platforms are not required to publish their specific regulations on what, in their estimation, can and cannot be said, it is effectively a question of martial law in an arena that many mistakenly consider to be a free speech upholding public forum, and thus a self-aggregating system for determining which ideas contain merit. External pressure from unaccountable watchdogs and from government has been seen to directly cause the suppression of certain ideas on social media, and even the summary deplatforming of certain individuals for asking the wrong sort of questions. If your number comes up, out the door you go. We already have actual laws criminalising speaking publicly in support of certain ideas. That sets a precedent, and if things carry on as they are now, we're in danger of inviting government to step in and legislate against many more. For those unaware, this is how your rights and freedoms are being reduced daily via the back door. A situation arises, or is caused seemingly to arise by the omission from the so-called debate of any contradictory information, where the people themselves will call for measures which would otherwise be a clear infringement of personal rights and freedoms, and government is only too happy to step in with the solution. Your rights and freedoms are yours to surrender, but when the rights and freedoms of others begin to be infringed upon because of your choices, that is a serious problem. I don't want to end this video on a down note, and it is actually the case that I'm extremely upbeat about how things are playing out on the world stage, despite the completely unfounded hysteria over COVID-19 and much of the general public's seemingly blank refusal to independently research the story we've been told. There is an old way of thinking and of doing things that is dying a horrible and ungraceful death on Earth right now. Some people seem to think they can save it, transmute it somehow, salvage something, living in the past as opposed to learning from it and moving on. The unpleasant debate we often see on social media, which I will be the first to admit I have fully and unconsciously engaged in at times, is a symptom of this ungraceful death. The inevitable transition from one age to the next is taking place at different rates in each one of us, and it seems we must project it outwards onto the anonymous strangers we encounter online and sometimes in real life, in order to process our own feelings. I urge anyone with a genuine interest in resolving any issue you've identified in the world at large to turn your awareness inwards to find the root cause. It's not always immediately apparent, and it's highly likely the connection won't be literal. It won't necessarily make logical sense to the thinking mind. We have to learn to follow intuition. But everything we see out there and the way we react to it is telling us something about our inner state. Every so-called opponent is a reflection of a disowned aspect of our fractured self, and resolving these issues will heal us, and in time it will heal the world. Those who aren't prepared, or who are unable to do the work, will not make it. They will die out with the old way of thinking and of doing things. Why do I bring all this up at the end of a video about conspiracy theories? Because this is where the rabbit hole has led me. Away from Babylon's disempowering illusions, right back to the center, to myself, and to the content of my own heart, which is really the only truth we need to discover. Thank you for listening to my viewpoint. I hope you are able to realise that nothing I have expressed here invalidates your own. I will leave you with two quotes. I do not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And secondly, all paths lead to the top of the same mountain.